the Amazing Women Speak podcast, inspiring and motivating every Black woman to own, honor, and execute her amazing individually and collectively as it was established at birth.
Everyone, thank you for joining us. It is Sunday, 7 p.m., and it's time for Amazing Women Speak. We have a fantastic episode today brought to you by the Amazing Woman Network, where we are created to unite and empower Black women globally, reclaiming our personal power, mind, body, and spirit, reclaiming our financial power, and increasing our social awareness. I am Crystal Gunn, founder of the Amazing Woman Network, financial strategist, and host of Amazing Women Speak. Before we get into this conversation and before we even find out who's here today, let me just frame how we got here. So last month was Mental Health Awareness Month. Was it last month? Okay. May was Mental Health Awareness Month, and I attended the Mental Health Awareness Summit. And to be honest, the reason I attended was because my best friend was the co-host. Was the keynote speaker. That is why I attended. But as I sat in that seat, I realized it was the exact place I didn't know that I needed to be. And sitting there, I realized we have to bring this conversation to Amazing Women Speak not only once, but every single month, because as I sat in that seat, I said, oh my God, every Black woman has to be dealing with some sort of stress, something that is impacting our mental health. So let's kick it off and find out who is here. Michele, take it away, please.
Thank you. Good evening. And welcome one more time as we begin to have some more conversation. I'm really excited to be with you tonight. For those who do not know, my name is Michele Harper. I am the owner and operator of Agency Fitness, LLC, where we invite women to own their agency, take back their power at whatever price they felt like they needed to pay in order to operate in their faith, their courage, and their strength. I am also blessed because my best friend said so. I'm the co-host of these conversations. Really, really excited to have our guest with us tonight. I have known Stacey for 20 years easily. And when she asked me to be the keynote at her event, say less, tell me where, tell me when, and I am absolutely there. There's nothing that this woman wouldn't do that I would not support. So I'm really excited to welcome into our space tonight, Stacy Williams.
Thank you. Oh my goodness, it's so awesome to be here. And the first thing I said to my husband today as I was leaving home, I said, I thank the Lord for opening doors that I didn't knock on.
Right?
Absolutely. I'm grateful.
Yes.
I'm grateful to be here. So thank you, ladies, for inviting me into your space and into your conversation. And my name is Stacy Williams. I'm a licensed professional counselor, and I'm also the founder of the Restoration Village Therapeutic and Holistic Services. And we are a healing space for individuals that have dealt with traumatic life circumstances. So whether you're a child or an adult or a teenager, we provide a space. Our space is virtual, but we also try to connect with people in the community by doing and providing community resource, hence the Mental Health Awareness Summit. And that was just really birthed out of frustration with the mental health system, bottom line. That it's so broken, for lack of a better word, and individuals just don't have access to what they're needing. And if we can try to be proactive by providing the information up front and giving individuals the opportunity to utilize the resources that are available before they hit rock bottom,
right,
then we can prevent them being connected to a system that's just not working right now.
Okay.
So that's where we started.
So we're going to dive right into this conversation because there's so much to talk about. So tell us first, Stacey, why the title, My Mental Health is My Business?
Oh, boy. Well, it started with me dealing with me first. right? So not only am I a licensed professional counselor and I provide therapy, but I do go to therapy. And as a part of just working with individuals and being able to connect with individuals in their healing spaces, I also go through my own healing. And it was just like moments of dealing with hearing, okay, you have this shooting on the news, right? And then you have this situation going on. And I'm called to deal with the tragedy, but I'm affected by the tragedy.
Right.
And it's like, I remember the shooting, the Oxford shooting. I remember debriefing with my mentor for like 2 hours after that scenario because of how it impacted me. 2 days later, I'm called to the front line to work with the Pontiac community of the kids that were affected by it. So it was just like an onslaught of situations. And then I had to really pause and say, at what point do we like literally realize that this is so important that we have to take care of our mental health? And I was just sitting one day and I was thinking, and I was like, you know what? Like talking out to myself, my mental health is my business. Like really, this is just, I got to really focus on taking care of myself. And that was months ago. This was maybe February. And as the months went on, then we had the shooting of the 7-year-old in Pontiac. And I was like, enough is enough. There's just not enough politicians, providers, information out there. And I just started planning this mental health awareness summit. My mental health is my business. That we have to really take charge of this focus of our life, right? Like Michele, you are so amazing with your lupus journey, right? And you made that your business. True story. Everybody who know you know that, right? So is our mental health. We don't see the wounds that people deal with. We don't see the scars because it's not a wheelchair and it's not a crutch and it's not an asthma inhaler. But our mental health is affected daily by life, and we got to make it our business to take care of ourselves.
So Facebook Live, this conversation does not happen without you. So please utilize the chat as we start to talk about and unpack what it means when we say my mental health is my business. How have you failed your business? Or what are some of your strategies that you've utilized to make that business a priority? Black women, we are dying at a rate that is unspeakable. We are suffering from depression. Stacey's going to give us some numbers, I know, right? But when we start to think about the impact daily to just show up, right? And we've had sessions where we've talked about thriving versus surviving, right? And the importance of no longer being a survivor and moving ourselves to thriving spaces. That's for some of us who have made our mental health our business. And so we're going to talk about that. Drop it in the chat. We're watching, we're listening, and we're responding.
Yes.
You all get, so let's start with what is mental health and what is not mental health, because usually you hear people say, you know, even if you suggest to somebody, maybe therapy might be a good idea.
I don't have a disorder.
I don't have a disorder. I'm not crazy.
I'm not crazy.
Yeah. So what is mental health?
And first of all, going to therapy does not mean you're crazy in any which way. But being able to say I'm taking care of my mental health is being able to say I have a sense of awareness about my stress levels, how to take care of my stress levels, how to connect with my community in a healthy way, how to respond to life stressors, which we have just in general every single day, right? And when you think about being able to say, I know how I can do that for me, is being able to say, I have a handle on my mental health, right? I know what my triggers are. I know when I get to this level, what I need to do in order to not appear as if I'm not in control of myself. So if you can able to identify that, then you can say, you know what, I have a handle or somewhat of a handle. Like even being aware of your mental health is being able to say, you know what, I'm not in a good space right now. Like I'm hurting, right? I'm upset. I just experienced something that has me frazzled and I just need a moment to decompress. I don't need to answer the phone right now. And just being aware of those things. And it's not necessarily saying, oh, I'm crazy or I have a diagnosis or anything. It's just having a general awareness of your ability to cope in an emotional space.
Wow. right? So come on, give us some of the numbers, and we're going to unpack that because we talked about this at the summit,
Yes.
right? Like when you don't find yourself in one of those categories, still what's happening, what's going on. So give us some of the numbers.
So these numbers come from NAMI, which is the National Alliance on Mental Illness, and these numbers were based on the effects of the pandemic. So they're from like the 2020 experience that we have. So when we say 1 in 5, and I'm like, 1 in 5 adults experience a mental, I want to say disorder, okay, or some form of indication that they may be dealing with something. So 1 in 5. 1 in 20 adults have been diagnosed with a serious mental illness. So this is where you identify your schizophrenia or your multiple personality disorder or your bipolar 1 and 2. So that's in those categories.
1 in 20.
1 in 20 adults. Then you have, let's talk about our
That's
kids.
a lot.
Right.
It is a lot.
1 in 20.
1 in 20.
And you just talked about some serious, not that I'm just stressed out, but the serious disorders. 1 in 20.
1 in 20. And that's according to NAMI. And then for our kids, we're talking about between the age of 12 and 17 years old, you have about 3 million that have experienced some form of mental illness, some form of disorder. And between the ages of like 12 and 34, we have suicide being the number 2 killer of this age group, right? Which is all based on a mental health disorder. And so when we hear disorder, a lot of people automatically identify a stigma with that disorder.
Right.
Well, it's just that in this moment, your emotional state is out of order.
Right.
It's not necessarily a bad thing, but it's so stigmatized, that it's almost really hard to overcome this mentality that getting mental health help means that you're crazy, you don't believe in God, you don't have enough faith, you're weak, and the list goes on and on.
Especially in the Black community.
Especially in our community, like significantly in our community.
Yeah.
And it's detrimental because what's happening is we are losing our sense of self, we are losing ourself, and we are just like really struggling. And Michigan as a state has a failing rate for mental health access.
Right.
Right?
Right.
There is no long-term mental health care. So if you're going to take care of your mental health and make it your business, you literally have to prioritize it. Because if you break down on the side of the road, AAA is not coming. No, they're not.
What was the statistic, Michele, that you talked about with just the one that just totally blew my mind, that every single day, right?
Wasn't it the 71%?
Yeah. Yes.
So listen, so you didn't hear yourself, you didn't see yourself in one of those categories that Stacey lifted up. And so when I was getting prepared for the keynote, I was doing some of my own study and research. And so, yes, you may not fall into one of those categories, but 71% of us struggle and get easily overwhelmed in making day-to-day decisions. 71% of us. And so I am clear, right, that we fall one time or another during the course of the day or the week. We fall in that 71%. And we're not paying attention to what's triggering, right? And how that's piling on to then we look up and we are now dealing with undiagnosed depression, right? That gets addressed in unhealthy ways. It's time that we recognize that my mental health is
my business.
My business.
And interestingly, Michele, is that when you think of the United States in general, depression and anxiety are the top 2 disorders that people deal with.
Oh, yeah, I can believe that.
Yeah. Anxiety 1, depression 2, which kind of like they go hand in hand, right? And what makes us anxious? Well, I can't pay my bills.
Right.
I don't have child care. We think about the regular things. My vehicle broke down. How am I going to go get a new job? And how am I going to do this, do that? Those little things create anxiety.
My black son is out by himself driving
Correct.
somewhere.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yes.
doing the day-to-day things.
Right.
Right? That many folks take for granted.
And I think there's a basis of the stress and the anxiety that just happened because you're Black in America.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right? Just like you said, the day-to-day living with what you have to live with being Black in America.
Yeah.
Then add on top of that other list.
Everything else.
Everything else.
Yeah. And you figure, as women, we're female, we're Black, we already have 2 strikes. Then we have our men. They probably have 3 or 4 before they walk out the door in the morning. Then you got our parents that worry about us, and can we deal with that? It's almost really like just widespread, anxiety-ridden, everything, you know. And so taking care of our mental health is essential, you know, because if we don't, it gets out of control. Like, I get calls all the time. Last week I got a call, and the young lady wanted therapy, but as I'm doing my consulting with her, just like talking in general, find out that she was having active suicidal thoughts. Well, you know, at that time, it's where we're more than just, let's talk about therapy. We like, no, you have to be stabilized. And the issue is, you now have to go through an emergency room. Your insurance is screened. If you don't have certain insurances, you got to sit and wait for certain beds to become available for you to get the help you need. If you have certain insurances, yeah, you can go through this door, but if you don't, you got to wait over here. And it goes on and on. And who wants to deal with that? Really?
When you have Big Mama telling you, oh, you just need to pray about it.
Yeah.
Right.
And the system is just not designed to provide the care that we need.
So what are some strategies? How do we begin to pay attention to the things that are happening in our lives that end up having the kind of impact that we don't even see are coming, right? Because we're so busy surviving.
Yeah.
Right? We're so busy surviving. And so before it even gets to the level of, I need to go, right, to seek some inpatient, like what are some of those strategies that we need to be paying attention to and recognizing, right? Like when we talk about my mental health is my business, it's the whole of who I am, right? And there are so many ways that we need to begin to pay attention. What are some of those things that we need to be looking out for?
Well, we need to be aware of ourselves. And self-awareness does not need to be like a jargon or overspoken. It really is essential. Like being alert. So for me, I try to minimize my stress, and then you have the moments where you can feel the tension building on the inside, right? So that's your first key. It's like a vehicle. Our vehicles are going to tell us when we're low on gas, when we need oil change, when our the new vehicles now tell you when your tire low, which one is low, how much you have, how much you need to put in there. It's literally no excuse to be on the side of the road no more, right? And so when we think of our bodies does the exact same thing.
Yes.
It tells us when we don't have enough sleep, when we don't eat enough, when we are too stressed, when we need to talk about it, when we need to go to sleep, when we need to get up. It literally communicates to us. But we go so much from year to year into survival mode. So we don't know when we're stressed out no more.
And we've been trained to not pay attention to our bodies. From, you know, I'm going to give this baby the pacifier. The baby's hungry, feed the baby, right? Yeah. And so we've been conditioned and trained to not pay attention to the cues from our body. So when you have the stress set in, you don't realize, okay, this is impacting so many areas of my life.
So many areas of my life, including your health, right?
Yeah.
So one of the kids that I'm working with, his guardian suffered a stroke last week, and guess what? From chronic stress, chronic. And I would, encourage, you probably should get your own therapist or see a doctor and maybe do these things. And she would always blow it off. Like, this is what I'm supposed to do. And that's another thing that we normalize is you'll get over it.
Right. Right.
It's life.
Right.
Right. And all those things are true. But in the process of trying to get over it and live in life, we still need to take care of ourselves. And so being able to identify that space when you know you're not okay, even before you get too far. So if you find yourself drinking to deal with the stress and smoking everything and snorting everything to cope, that's an indication that your mental health is probably in trouble. Increased depression, increased anxiety, like crying constantly or no reason, sleeping too much, isolating, where you feel like you can't, the things you used to do, you just can't do it anymore because you're so emotionally drained. Those are indicators, right? So the normal day-to-day activities that you just cannot find yourself doing is an indicator that there's something going on. And so taking the time to identify what that is. You know, a lot of times, a lot of us are truly scared of how we feel.
Right.
We won't confront how we feel.
Right.
A lot of it had to do with how we were raised.
Correct.
I was raised with, you don't have nothing to be mad about. Fix your face, right?
Right.
What you upset
Right.
about?
So
I give you something to cry for.
So you push it down.
So what you do with that?
Right.
I was an adult before I learned how to acknowledge and honor my emotions. And we don't. So a lot of people just kind of keep going. And they go from trauma after trauma after trauma. And our community is trauma-ridden. We can't escape it, right? We doing it on a community level. Then you have a family level, then a personal level. It's trauma after trauma after trauma. So before you know it, you just kind of waiting for the next situation. Who gonna get shot next, right? You hear the bullet, what you do? You dodge. And you just kind of get up and keep moving without taking care of identifying the fact that this is impacting my life.
Yeah, we're getting desensitized to the things that we need to be paying attention to. I really like the analogy about the car, right? And I like to think about it around the necessity for therapy, right? I love my best friend, right? And I know she's got my best interest at heart. And there are going to be some things she tells me that are so much in my best interest that I may be missing something else, right? Right? And so just like you would not drive your car more than 3,000 miles without, right? Because the sludge is going to start happening. It's important for us to pay attention to our mental health and getting in therapy, somebody who is trained.
Yes.
Who can provide. Because the best friend, the girlfriend's grandma, right? Like that's not the source that we need to be going to when we really need to start unpacking. And it's the necessary tune-up for life.
For real.
Right? And really prioritizing. It's not a sign of weakness. We're going to break out of that socialization Facebook. It's not a sign of weakness to recognize that I need help and I'm building the infrastructure that's going to keep me in the game, at the table, before I have the complete breakdown. That tune-up is necessary for life.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially like you want to have the feedback of somebody that has no level of bias. Like on some way, Crystal has some level of bias, right? And vice versa, right? And you want to be able to be in a space, a safe space where you can be completely vulnerable. You know, and just be honest about what you're thinking, what you're feeling, what has happened to you, who did what to you, and being able to just get those things out. Yeah. And how far it goes to know that you have a space. And once people, like working with individuals, once they are consistent in therapy, and then they go like 2-3 weeks without it, especially when they're really in that healing space, they realize that, wait a minute, I need to stay connected, because when I don't, it literally feels like everything is falling apart, when really what's happening is you're healing, and now that you're healing and everything is happening, it becomes it's become a little bit challenged. So you think of like you break your leg, right? They tell you no pressure for 6 to 8 weeks, and then you're sitting there with no pressure for 6 to 8 weeks, and something fall over there and you can't get it, right? And you're trying to get it, and how much harder it seems. It's not that you're not capable. You're just not in a space that you can do it right now. And that's what happens when you're going through therapy and you're in that healing space and life is happening. You find out how beneficial it is to stay connected as you go through your healing journey.
You're full of the analogy.
I know, right?
Right, like those simple connections, right?
I use it a lot because it helps clients connect. Like, oh, it's that simple. Yeah, it really is. But I have to use life things that we know to help them just kind of see it.
So I want you to give a phone number for you that people can reach you if they need to.
Okay, so my number is 248-842-2310. So that's 248-842-2310.
And for people who may just be tuning in, tell us again who you are and what you do.
So my name is Stacy Williams, and I am a licensed professional counselor in the state of Michigan, and I am the owner of the Restoration Village Therapeutic and Holistic Services, where we provide individual, family, group, therapy and support for individuals that are recovering from trauma and recovering from dealing with life's events. That's what we do, and that's where we are.
One more time for the phone number. I'm dropping it in the chat.
Drop it in the text, 248-842-2310.
Get out your pens, take some notes, because this information is vital, and what you're giving is so crazy. I literally was in the emergency room because I had stressed my own self out, right? And I'm like, okay, am I having a heart attack? What is really happening here? Blood pressure through the roof. And I'm like, this doesn't make sense. And because I'm such an achiever, one of the things Michele said to me was, you have to set what achievement looks like for you, right? Because I found myself putting more pressure and stress on me than I should, and it was impacting me health-wise.
Yeah.
So there's so much going on in this world today, and now everything that you said before and what's happening with the economy, this upcoming, you just keep hearing the word recession, and gas prices are crazy. And if you go to this grocery store, everything is tripled in price. It's absolutely ridiculous. So that's adding more pressure and more stress on people. What is like one of those first signs? What's like a warning, that red flag or that warning that people should try to take note and say, okay, wait, I can't keep doing this. I need to call someone.
And I will go with like chronic. Usually our body's going to give us something that's ongoing. So that headache, it's okay to have a headache in the morning for a couple hours, but then if you have the headache going 4 days, you done took 6 Tylenols, drank water, took a nap, called off work 3 days in a row, and you still got this headache.
It's a problem.
Ding ding.
Red flag.
Right? That tightness in the chest. One thing my doctor taught me years ago was that we all have stress points in our body. And she says, your head, your stomach, your back. And so one of those places are going to indicate some level of stress for us. So you have to know what that is for you and who you are, and you have to be able to identify that. Some people have racing thoughts. Like literally, you cannot stop them thoughts. They keep you up. So now you have insomnia, right? They make it to where you can't function, you can't focus, the kids can't talk to you, the dog can't bark. And before you know, like you just like a hot potato everywhere you go. That's an indicator, a key indicator. Or we should be able to control our thoughts, right? Because they're our thoughts. They're going through our head. But if you find yourself not being able to stop those thoughts, it's a real sign. Okay? The other thing is uncontrolled emotions. Like, our emotions don't have intellect. So we kind of can't always feed off of it. We have to be able to say, you know what? I'm sad, but I still have to do this. When you can't decipher with your emotions, that's another indicator. If it's just all over the place, everything you're on edge. I'm not talking about PMS, and I ain't talking about menopause.
Right.
I'm talking about that moment where everything just overwhelms you completely to the point where it impacts your ability to function. Anything that impacts our ability to function on a regular basis, what you know you're capable of doing, is a sign that something is not okay.
And so when you talk about the ability to function, right, we're not talking about that level that you've pushed yourself. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about that day-to-day kind of stuff.
That day-to-day.
Because I am clear, right? Like as Black women, we're on 10 plus all the time because we've got to go, we've got to do, we got to prove, we got to solve, we got to fix, right? And so that's not the level she's talking about, right? We're talking about that normal
That normal basic minimum.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then let's talk about the single moms. Can we talk about the single moms?
Please.
because I was a single mom for years, and I found myself in that situation where I'm going because of the kids. I didn't have what it took for me to do it for me. But because of my children, I kept going. And in doing that, I didn't even allow myself to heal.
Wow.
It took years to realize that you need to heal too, right? So I'm trying to make sure they're protected through the divorce and they're protected through the craziness that's happening with life, and I'm neglecting myself. So guess what happened to all that stuff?
Right.
Guess what happened to it? It didn't go nowhere. So now I'm hauling 3 suitcases, a duffel bag here, a book bag, all of stuff that hasn't been unpacked because I didn't get to heal while taking care of the kids.
And what does that then do to the kids? Because what are they seeing?
And exactly.
Right? What are we teaching them? To do the same thing. And the cycle continues.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I like, there's always that opportunity, right? Like that self-work is so critical, and being willing to be vulnerable enough to unpack some of the things that we've been carrying since we were children.
Yeah.
Right? That is really driving the way that we're showing up or not showing up for ourselves. You deserve to put yourself as such a priority, right? That your mental health is such your business that you will not allow anything or anyone come before that. Because Stacy just lifted up really clear, right? Like she did it for her number one priority in life, which is her children. And that was not enough.
It wasn't enough.
Right? You just pack some more bags. And
Literally.
said, let's go.
Right.
Literally.
Pack some more bags, as opposed to recognizing that my mental health, nobody else is going to do it for you. Nobody else is going to prioritize it for you. They will continue to see you go, do, solve, fix, move along.
And
right?
then when you break down, they're going to be like, girl, what's wrong with you?
And not to mention the stuff that they added to your bags.
Because they want what they want.
They want what they
Yeah.
want.
And I use this other analogy because it helps people visualize what I'm saying, is if you have a closet and all you keep doing is shoving stuff in there and you never clean it out, like you never, but you just, you know that one closet when you know people coming over, you just throw stuff in and you close the door. You know that closet.
That one Friends episode.
Eventually, when you go to open that closet,
Everything is
it's going to fall out on you.
Yeah.
And that's when it all falls apart. And it's that moment when you have to realize, wow, and it happens so much to us because we are busy doing this, that, that we don't even value the fact that, hey, I'm worth healing too.
You just said a whole...
Right?
Yeah.
Right? So listen. So Facebook is always, right, like giving us quotes and advice and suggestions, right? So Facebook, the one that tells us when we say check on your strong friends, we're not okay. Strong friends, check on yourself. You deserve that level of commitment to yourself. Stop waiting for the world to give you something that you have not yet figured out you're worthy of, right? I'm going to check on my strong friend, and I'm inviting you to check on yourself.
Yeah. We have to kind of like realize we're
I'm talking
always...
to myself today, just so.
Yeah, you was talking to me too. So.
That's all
Everybody
right.
wants to know I'm talking to you today.
I'm here with you.
Yeah.
I realize I'm with me all the time, right? Like you're with you all the time. So if you don't like you,
Right.
you can't stand you,
Right.
you don't like the way you feel about yourself,
You don't put yourself first.
what you think people doing?
Feeding off just what you're giving them.
Really?
Yeah.
Like I learned that and I was like, ooh.
So when folks are, how do you, again, talking to me today, promise you.
Right.
How do you encourage folks to take that first step? Like, I've been in therapy. I am clear it's time for me to go back, and I have avoided therapy intentionally since my father passed. I have never fully grieved my father. Never fully grieved. Out of the fear of not coming back, right? And I'm clear every day what I carry with me, the level of weight, the level of sadness, the level of not being fully who I can be, because I have never fully grieved my father. And I know the benefits of therapy and have still been afraid to go back. How do you encourage somebody to take that first step?
So I'm going to say to you, afraid of what?
Yeah, the brink of literally not being able to come back, right? Daddy's girl, hands down, right? And I was clear. I didn't leave anything unsaid. So it's not that, right? My dad and I talk all the time. Didn't leave anything unsaid. But while I went through caring for everybody else, right?
Yeah.
Like in that immediate, I had to push it down. Didn't have to. I chose to push it down. Like, let me own mine. I didn't have to push, but I pushed it down to take care of everybody else. And then when it was time, the word was like, oh, it's time to move on, right? So I continued to push down. And every time I've gotten close, the tears, I have to shove them back because I don't think I will ever recover. And so that's the fear. And so, yeah. And so now we're going to talk to everybody. Like, how do you encourage folks to take that first step when you keep recognizing the pain in the chest, the constant headache, right? The things that the Tylenol is not fixing. How do you encourage folks to take that first step? Because I don't know. How do you find a good therapist? And, right? Like, it's not the first pair of shoes you're going to try and they're not going to fit perfectly. So how do you, what does that work like?
All that, like, you really nailed it. It's hard because it's kind of like you're going shopping for a house, right? You look at different houses and you're like, this don't have what I'm needing. So it does take time to find the appropriate therapist. And therapists right now are just, even in Michigan, we don't have enough therapists for the need that there is. So there is that level of shortage truly that exists. But I always say to people, if you can identify that there's a reason why, you may feel guarded or kind of like on the fence about going to therapy. Okay, let's start with some basic things that you can do. Let's talk about journaling. I strongly believe in journaling because it helps you to really connect with yourself on that level of vulnerability that you would probably have if you were in a therapist's office. It's you, yourself, this book, the lines, and you really get to go there. Now, if you can get through journaling, because some people also say, no, I don't want to deal with that because that's just as bad because I got to face my emotion and I'm going to be crying and all of this, and I get it.
So let's just put a pause right there because I'm sure a lot of people fall into that category. Like, I just don't want to face whatever this is, right? How do you get past that? Like, I can't even think about going to a therapist. I can't even think about journaling until I say I'm ready to deal with whatever this is.
Yeah. And so I say, well, do you want to feel better? Do you?
Simple and basic, right?
Do you want to feel better?
Simple and basic.
So if you're okay with the headaches, okay.
Right.
If you know your blood pressure, they don't put you on the third blood pressure medication.
It's interesting that you just said the blood pressure medicine. So when I went to the cardiologist, right, and if you know me, you know I'm not doctor friendly. Like, I'm not medical doctor friendly. So, and I actually liked this guy, right, because of the conversations that we had. And he asked about what I was eating, and we went down this list, and I'm like, no, I don't eat all of this stuff that, the processed, I don't eat all of that. And, he went to the blood pressure being high in the African-American community just because, and it was after I left, and I said, well, yeah, because it's hard being black. So we have to, again, just deal with that first level. And so again, it's so many layers to it. It's so many layers.
It's so many. It's balance, and it's not easy to always maintain and obtain balance in your life where everything is like this versus this.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? And it's such an intentional process. Like, I use my journal and my planner, and I'm always having to give myself grace, right? Because if I don't accomplish this thing that I said I want to work on, it's okay, Stacey. Like, I was doing a 30 for 30 challenge with my girlfriend, and that's 30 days, at least 30 days of work, 30 minutes of workout for 30 days, at least 30 minutes. And I'm like, oh yeah, I got this. I'm down 30 for 30, 30 for 30. Well, there's also so many other things happening in my life. So I have to give myself grace when I don't make make it to the gym or get to work out, because these other things are going on. And before, I would put so much pressure and then start feeling like, you know what, I can't even keep a commitment to myself. But no,
And then doesn't that then add on to the thing,
It
like,
adds
I can't
on.
I
It
can't
adds
do
on.
this, I can't keep the commitment, I can't do this, then you feel like,
then you start having negative self-talk
Right.
that impacts the way you feel about yourself. And it's just like a cycle.
yeah.
So Facebook, we're here. We want to hear from you. Talk to us about some of the things that you've struggled with. Please, again, go through the comments and find Stacy's number. She will make referrals if you haven't made that first connection with her. Because like she said, it's like purchasing a house. You have to be sure, right, that you get the right fit. And so she wasn't the only counselor that she brought to her summit, because she recognized, right, like there's a different fit, there's a different venue, there's a different avenue that folks have to travel down to find their path. And so what have been some of those struggles for you? And more importantly, share some of your successes. What are some of the things that you've done that you've really begun to prioritize, that your mental health is your business, and taking care of yourself, the wholeness of who you are, so that some of the other things don't happen, that you're not dealing with the chronic headaches, that you're not dealing with that pain that's sitting inside of your chest that you cannot explain, that you are able to control your emotions, right? And that you're not lashing out on folks.
Yeah. Or
because
yourself.
of things. True story. True
Yeah.
story.
And let's not do the typical, you make the first appointment, that one doesn't go well. See, I told you that this wouldn't work, because we're
Right.
really good for that. So let's not do that.
So tell us a little bit, though, about virtual, right? So it happened because of the pandemic, which kind of gives us now more access, more reach. What does that look like for folks who are already not sure?
So I always describe the virtual space as, it's like being in the therapist's office, but you just are in your space doing it. So there are certain things you wouldn't do when you go to the therapist's office, right? You're not going to bring a box of KFC and Sprite.
Got you.
Right?
Okay.
You're going to be sitting there. You may have your tissue and your water, and that's what you're doing, right? You're not going to be yelling on the phone and doing all that while you're in your office. So we try to set boundaries that individuals get to experience therapy as if they were in the office. So I'm not going to be in front of my TV and doing all that. I have to follow the law where I'm in a private space that allows me to work with the individual that's on my screen with confidentiality and with privacy. So I create that space in my home, and then I encourage individuals to create that space as well. So I love interaction. So I'm always, especially for our children, the screen is interactive, the activities are interactive. So you keep them engaged for at least 40 to 45 minutes, especially depending on their age. Adults are different because they still want to connect. And I find that adults do really good. As a matter of fact, the kids do too, because doing virtual school kind of prepared them for all this. So they're very hands-on, and, they get connected via the screen, even as we talk and just kind of do different things to explore their emotions and what they're going through and experiencing in life. So that's how I try to describe it.
Okay, so one less excuse, right?
Right.
We
You
now
don't even
have
have to leave.
access.
Right. Yeah.
And I know it can be challenging, right? Because that human connection, energy
The
when
energy.
you're with people,
Yeah.
and right? No excuse.
No excuse.
So when we were at the summit, we had an opportunity to attend one of the breakouts. Self-care is a part of this conversation, right?
Yes.
And so the two young ladies that you had having conversation with us, shout out to Leah and Brittany,
And they did an awesome job.
phenomenal job.
Yes.
And so I remember sharing with the group that when I used to do leadership training, I used to tell the women the importance of no, that it was a full sentence with a period, and we needed to stop putting a comma
Right.
behind that, right? And so they took it to the next level and said, what was it?
No is
No is a real thing because yes is expected. expensive.
Yes.
And then come to find out that there was a gentleman on Facebook who was having this conversation about yes being expensive, that there's a real estate, there's a cost to you. And every time you give up that yes, you leave no room, less room, negative room for the yes that belongs to you. Right? So when we start talking about self-care, one of the first thing is check how many yeses you're giving out.
That's deep. I like that.
When you had, when we did the Let's Whine About It at your house, I think it was one of the attendees there. And I thought this was awesome because she probably was 32 or something like that. And I think she said for 30 days, she told everybody no. And I thought that that was huge. And she was like, it was things that she wanted to go to. It was, you know, events she wanted to attend. But because she had committed to herself, because she always overextended herself and said yes to everybody, she said everybody gets a no for the next 30 days.
Yeah, I love that.
Right. Small ways of taking your power back.
Yeah, I thought that was
Prioritizing,
huge.
Making your mental health your business.
Yeah, I used to say yes to everything too, and felt bad if I didn't. Like, no, that's poor boundaries. It's like you wouldn't give everybody a key to your house now, would you? You wouldn't. No. You'd be like, I don't know you, so guess what?
Analogy.
Right.
It's the boundaries that we set, and the boundaries are essential because they protect us. You know, and again, I love using it because it helps clients make connection with, when I say boundaries, what am I talking? You wouldn't give everybody a key to your front door, your garage code, your PIN to your debit card. You're just not doing those things. Why? Because you're protecting your property and your investments. Well, do the same with yourself.
Wow. Wow. Right? Like that kind of smacks hard.
It does.
Right?
It absolutely
Because I am
does.
clear I'm not passing out my pen. Right?
Right.
And yet some days I do still pass out the yeses. Right? I am and needing to pay attention to what that's costing me because it is expensive.
It really is.
Expensive.
Puts us over the edge. Puts us over the edge, and we find ourselves, again, juggling too many balls, trying to keep them all up in the air at the same time.
Right?
What about the news? Like, I don't watch the news. I quit watching the news a long time ago. And when my dad was still alive, and I would go over there, and they would, you know, because you're watching the 4 o'clock, to 5 o'clock, to 6 o'clock. And when I get there, he would just hand me the remote because he knew we're not doing that. Because 3 minutes in, you want to slit your own wrist.
Yeah.
Because it's, right? So I think part of that self-care and that mental health being my business is being very cautious of what you allow into
your space.
Yeah, your physical, and your mental space.
I'll say this: I don't watch the news because of my field. I hear enough news, if you will, and so if I do take in the news, it's on my discretion. It's in small bouts. It's basic enough to keep myself informed about what's going on, but I'm not delving in it where I'm just so engrossed. No. People suffer secondary trauma just watching the news, right? And you're not even there in the situation, but just watching the situation can reignite your old wounds and your old circumstances, and now you're here exposed to something else. No, thank you. So you have to really protect yourself with that. And even for our kids, like my parents are the same with the news, and when my kids were younger, and I would have to tell them, could you please not watch the news around them? Like, because they'll be like, Mom, this and this happened in the I'm like, whoa, you know too much. Like, what's going on? So, you know, just being conscientious of that and taking those things in bouts. It's okay to not, we think we're informed, but if it's affecting the way you feel, like if you can't go to sleep and you're suffering from insomnia because of watching the news and because of what you're ingesting, it's probably time to kind of back up off of it a little bit and do it in proportion to your ability to cope. If it affects your ability to cope, it's too much.
And same thing with social media, because a lot of stuff that you see on social media is doing the same thing. Definitely. It's the replay that everyone else, they're replaying it constantly. Everybody's posting it on the feed.
So I need you to slow down and back up for 1 minute, Stacey, and I know we're coming up on time, but you said something that I need for you to make sure that the listeners understand what it is. Secondary trauma.
Okay, so secondary trauma occurs when you either hear about somebody's experience or you kind of you're hearing it or they're kind of replaying it. So it's not something you experience firsthand. It's something that happens secondhand. So, for example, my girlfriend fell and broke her hip about a month ago, and it messed me up. Just hearing her tell me what happened to her. I had all kinds of things going on. I had to tell her, like, I can't handle it. I can't. It's too much. But even though she's going through a lot, it was significantly impacting my ability to function and cope. Just hearing her story. So it's either you're hearing what happened to another person, but from them or from somebody else, or you're witnessing like a replay of what happened to them. Like, you can be watching the news and you watch those scenarios where police brutality with our black man, that's secondary trauma. Because you're not the one experiencing it, but watching this happen to this man is traumatizing you and affecting your ability to cope.
Yeah, so something has happened in your history, right? That incident is triggering something for you, right?
Yeah.
And you're experiencing trauma and not even realizing it. And so I asked you to back up and talk about that, because a lot of us are experiencing secondary trauma and don't even know it and don't know what to name it, and being able to name it, right? Like, so why, right in that moment or shortly thereafter, really doing some self-reflection, what's happening, that incident, that situation bubbled up for you, whatever you're feeling right then, right? Like, and start to unpack that and pay attention to it. And that's where journaling really does come in handy. Start writing that down and pay attention to those things that are triggers for you, so that you can build those boundaries, right? And start trying to find some strategies to address it. Again, it is really important for us to be paying attention, for us to ask for help. It's not a sign of weakness. Stacy's number is 248-842-2310. We invite you to call her, have conversation with her. Again, she will make referrals, give you some names if she's not able to assist you right out of the gate. Never stop asking for help. Never stop believing that you don't deserve to be your very best. So give 30 days of no to the world and 30 days of yes to yourself. Feed yourself with positive affirmations as a way of paying attention to your mental health. I promise you, it will change your life. So many of us, when old girl walks in the room and she's happy all the time, we've got something negative to say. Nobody can be that happy, right? Well, why not? Right. And why aren't you? And so we invite you, 30 days of no to the world, 30 days of yes to yourself, positive affirmations along the way, and I promise you, it will change your life. Talking to Michele right now.
And keep repeating that, and keep repeating that, keep repeating that. This has been so good, and I'm so glad that you joined us for this. We're seeing more and more conversations around mental health. Clearly, they're not enough. It's just clearly not enough. And you hear a term, generational curses. And I think this is one of the generational curses that we need to break, that we aren't talking about enough, because we're teaching our children how to survive instead of strive, and we're teaching them how to just put more stuff in the closet, right? Put more stuff in the bag and just carry this bag around. And before we close out, one thing or a couple of things that parents should look at with their children, and then seeing that, saying, oh, maybe I need to get my child in therapy.
Well, first thing is we do need to talk to our kids about their mental health, and that needs to be normalized. That should never be something that it's so foreign and way out there. Talk to your kids about their feelings. They need to know what they're experiencing. There's a book called The Way I Feel. That's what I use with my kids, that talked about every emotion, what it looks like. Kids need to be able to identify that. They need to be able to say, I'm feeling sad. I'm feeling angry. I am feeling disappointed. They need to say that. That should be normal. But parents, when you notice that your kids have excessive anger outbursts, they're self-harming, they're talking about suicide, they are showing like excessive sadness and an inability to regulate even with your support, it's time for help.
Again, Stacey, one more time with the number, please.
248-842-2310.
Thank you so much. Thank you, our listeners, for joining us today. Michele, thank you as always. This has been such a good conversation. I just couldn't even ask a lot of questions because what you gave was so on point. I can't wait to have you come back again. You can check us out on Facebook at The Amazing Woman Network and on YouTube at Amazing Women Speak. Thank you again for joining us. I am Crystal Gunn. I am a Black woman. I own my amazing, and my mental health is my business.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you again, Facebook listeners. One more time, Crystal Gunn, thank you for being obedient to the call on your life.
Yes.
We all get better with every single conversation. My name is Michele Harper. I am a Black woman. I own my amazing, and my mental health is going to be more of my business moving forward. Yes.
And thank you, ladies, for having me. This was truly an honor and a privilege to be a part of this discussion and this movement where we say, you know, my mental health is my business. My name is Stacy Williams. I am a Black woman. I am amazing.
Yes.
And I own my amazing.
That's right.
And my mental health is my business. Join the movement, make it yours, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you.
Amazing Women Speak podcast, inspiring and motivating every Black woman to own, honor, and execute her amazing, individually and collectively, as it was established at birth.